Has this government finally admitted that these tax rises are indeed going to affect working people, let alone the argument about who is a working person? Because apparently I wouldn't be a working person, according to Keir Starmer and how he described it, but I seem to work all the time, so I don't quite understand that. But it seems that they've finally admitted that it will indeed affect working people. And if I were being even more harsh, some people, for legal reasons, may feel that they've been misled or lied to by this government when they said they were not going to raise taxes on working people. Let's take a look at what I'm talking about here. But first of all, if you do enjoy what I think of as a brutally honest approach to what I see reported in the media, please do subscribe to my channel. About 60% of you still don't do that. I would love for you to do that so I can reach a wider audience. I have no editorial control. I'm not a big news conglomerate. I am just me. I don't even have a team. It's just me. So please subscribe. So let's take a look at this, shall we? Wrong slide. Let's go to this one. This is the Office of Budget Responsibility's Economic and Fiscal Outlook. Now, the Office of Budget Responsibility is responsible for taking an economic forecast of the UK public spending and predicting outcomes and things like that. The important bit here is what they talk about with respect to earnings growth go in the coming years. Now, this highlighted bit here, they say real earnings growth is around 2.5% in 2024. So in English, just how much the average person earns going up is about 2.5% in 2024. But that falls to around 0 in 2026 and 2027. Real wages are around 1.5% higher than our March forecast in 2028, despite being lowered by around 0.5% due to budget policies, due to a higher starting point. Now, in other words, again, your average working person's earnings are going to be affected. The growth is going to go to 0 by 2026 and 2027. And shock horror, this is as a result of employer national insurance going up and all of the other taxes going up. And so businesses, as I said in my previous videos, are going to look to reduce their costings by lowering wages. You don't need to be an economic genius to figure this out. I am not an economic genius. I have run businesses for many years now, over 20 years, well over 20 years, I'd have to work it out. But I can predict this quite straight. It's quite a straightforward thing. If businesses have higher costs, they have to look to lower those costs somewhere. And if the vast majority of a business's costs are in the staff, they're going to reduce those costs. But the key question here is, has this government finally accepted that? Because all along, they've said that they are not increasing taxes on working people. They are protecting working people, protecting smaller businesses, etc. But smaller businesses, I would say, have just got a handful or a dozen staff. That would still really equate to a small business, as opposed to hundreds and thousands of staff like the bigger businesses. But many of those smaller businesses are now going to struggle. They've done interviews where business owners are saying we are going to have to cut staff because we simply won't be able to afford it. And all of this, not even to mention the effect on farmers. I mean, one poor farmer is now reported to have hung himself with the incoming inheritance tax for farmers. Now, just very briefly touching on that before I come back to these videos, the attack on farmland is in essence that most farms are well over and above £1 million worth, and £1 million is now the threshold under which they won't pay inheritance tax. Most farms are passed down from generation to generation so they can continue farming. But above that is now going to be a net effect of 20% inheritance tax, anything over and above £1 million. So this really is going to have a significant effect on lots of farms. Again, I'm not an economic expert, but I trust those that are, and the farmers themselves that know firsthand what that is going to have, what impact that's going to have on them. But let's come to these videos here. This is an interview with Keir Starmer and what he said, and then what the Chancellor says. Just take a listen to this.
Prime Minister, you say you're the party of business, but you've hammered business with this budget. You're not on the side of businesses, are you?
We've chosen to protect working people, and therefore, for working people, no increase in their income tax, in their national insurance, their VAT. That's what we promised before the election.
And so, again, stressing that this is not to affect working people. But the Office of Budget Responsibility says it will. But does the Chancellor now actually accept that that really is the case? Take a listen to her response now.
Absolutely accept that wage growth may be weaker than it otherwise would have been.
She says, I absolutely accept that wage growth might be weaker than it otherwise would have been. It's a very roundabout way of saying, yes, I accept this is going to hit working people. So does that not go against everything that they've been saying for a long time now? But that's not it. There's an excruciatingly painful interview here about exactly the same question, and had to ask the question a number of times before finally accepting that this really is the truth. Listen to this one.
But I mean, no, but you brought it up again. Yesterday, the Chancellor said wage increases might be slightly less than they otherwise would have been. De facto, that is clearly a hit on working people. Paul Johnson of the IFS said the continued pretense that these changes will not affect working people risks further undermining trust.
I'm not giving any pretense about anything. All I'm telling you is that the Treasury, which sets tax rates, is not increasing the rate of tax on working people.
But at that point, I have to come back to this page here from the Office of Budget Responsibility, because on the one hand, these politicians are saying that this is not affecting working people, but looking at what this says here. But forecast and policy changes leave nominal and real earnings growth lower over the remainder of the forecast as employers pass on the national insurance contributions rise, rebuild profit margins, and the temporary boost to demand fades. So this is absolutely affecting working people, and it's quite ridiculous to suggest that it isn't. But this interview continues, and as I said, it's painful, because one thing that is really frustrating is asking the same question again and again and just not getting a straight answer. That's the one reason that frustrates me about politics. That's why I didn't usually talk about politics, and then some people saying, why was I not talking about politics before? It's because that's the reason. I don't like asking a question and not getting a straight answer. But the reason talking about it now is because after all this time, these massive changes are affecting lots of people. And they are affecting working people, despite them saying that it isn't. But listen to this excruciating attempt to get a straightforward answer, asking the same question repeatedly. Listen to this.
That was the promise we've made.
Does it hit working people?
That we've delivered. We completely respect the OBR's assessment.
Does it hit working people?
So we recognise that the OBR has predicted that in future...
Does it hit working people?
I'm answering your question. The OBR has predicted that in future years, wage growth may become lower as a consequence of employers having to pay more.
So it hits working people?
Employer national insurance. Yes, but the question in the manifesto...
Yes, it does. So again, I come back to...
So absolutely just about squeezed a very short breath of yes in amongst all of that garbled discussion of the OBR says this, the OBR, I respect what the OBR says. This is infuriating because this is absolutely straightforward. As I said, you don't need to be an economical business genius to work out that if business costs go up, which include employers' national insurance, those costs are going to have to be met somewhere. And it's going to be met by these businesses passing those costs on somehow. And many businesses will have no choice but to either make staff redundant, take on fewer staff, pay those staff lower pay increases, and all sorts of things. So these are going to have to be met somehow. But as I say, does this now mean that they've officially and finally agreed just about that what they were saying all along, that this doesn't affect working people, in fact does. So I think you can take that as quite a straightforward thing. This absolutely does affect working people. But this then leads you to question everything they said about not hitting working people, such as this one back over here.
Very clear in the manifesto that we wouldn't be increasing tax on working people, and we expressly said that that was income tax, that was NICs, etc. So we set that out in the manifesto.
But NICs just for employees?
Well, it's very clear from the manifesto that what we were saying is we're not going to raise tax for working people.
And frankly, I think you have to be naive to think that increasing all of these things on the company is not going to affect the employees. I don't think you need to have experience in running a business to know that that is the likely outcome. But if you did, I don't think they do, but if any of them did have experience in running businesses, they would know that, because they would know that these businesses have to meet those costs somehow. So let's just take a wild example. If there's a massive shortage of materials somewhere, those materials become scarce, therefore the price will go up because supply and demand, the price is likely to go up if they're very scarce. Therefore, the cost in producing whatever it is they produce goes up. Therefore, you as the consumer will pay a higher price for it. It really is that simple. And the same goes for staff. A straightforward cost to business is staff. So if the cost of that employee goes up, I've had real economists with MBAs and dozens of years experience write into me and say that these NICs by the employer or the employee are always in effect paid by the employee because they are a product of business and they are a cost to the business. And so one way or another, if their productivity is costing the business money, they will lose their job. They'll just not be employed. And so with those costs going up, they will always effectively be paid by that employee. So again, it just frustrates me that we cannot get straightforward answers. I would like straightforward answers. It's like what we do in court. We ask a question, we like an answer. We like a straightforward answer. If the witness doesn't answer the question, we will ask again and again, and eventually the judge will intervene and insist that they answer the question. And if they still fail to answer the question, then the judge will just take anything else they've said with a lack of credibility because they're refusing to cooperate, they're refusing to answer the question. And so, in essence, it will go against them if they don't answer the question. But that is what we're used to in court. You ask a question, you get an answer. You get a straightforward answer. And most judges don't like insisting on a yes-no question unless it's absolutely crystal clear cut, yes, no. But of course, you can ask in that way, but a witness is free to answer in the way that they wish. But you should still really get a straightforward answer to a question. And so here, there is a straightforward yes-no answer to this question. You can caveat it all you like. Yes, it's going to affect working people because it's going to have an effect on pay increases in future, and that is going to reduce to next to zero. So yes, effectively, it will be paid and have an effect on working people. So let me know what you think about this in the comment section below. If you voted Labour and you believe that they were not going to raise these taxes and you believe that as a working person it was not going to affect you, and how do you feel now? Do you feel that this admission here that it is going to have an effect on working people, as weak and tenuous as that admission was, do you now feel that you've been misled? Do you now feel regretful that you voted for Labour, if you did vote for Labour? Let me know in the comments what you think. But either way, thank you for supporting my channel. I am independent. I don't have the editorial control of some of these big news companies. I don't have someone telling me what I can and can't say. I can share with you my views, and I try to do that as objectively but brutally as I can, because I will call this out where I see it. But in the meantime, please do like the video, subscribe, ring the notification bell. That helps me to reach a wider audience. And as always, thank you for watching.